Yes, I had strong feedback.
Did you not do any corrections for her?
Nice. I'm going to turn that off.
I don't have long-term drafts. I did the work for one day.
Here, Vincent, I should say.
I need to set up a second system, and I'm actually thinking I want you to storage all wrapped up. Amazon does it. Google does it. Joelle's looking right now. So I don't care where we
Yeah, hold on. Hello. Hopefully you're here for the CIDROPS meeting and not NetMod, which got moved to Sophia. We'll get started in a minute. I just have to get one last set of slides loaded. Closer to the mic, more to the mic, closer to the mic, better. That's okay, good.
I just want to say thank goodness you got the room. I mean, can you imagine how bad it would be if we'd been in a smaller room?
It's a bit frosty here inside.
Your display. Great. Okay, if somebody could kick the door back in the back closed, I think we can get started. This is IETF 100. This is also the CIDROPS meeting, not NetMod. If you think you're a NetMod, you should go to Sophia. It's that way. Oh, wait, that way. It's not here. I'm Chris. This is Kayur. Here's the note well. I'm sure you've seen it before. It might be last year's model. It says the same thing, though. We have an agenda. Anybody want to add anything? Say anything different? Rudiger?
I would like to have a little bit of open mic at the end.
Open mic at the end, will do. Anything else? Oh, somebody from NetMod. Oh, before we go to the slide for the status, yeah. So we have a bunch of drafts, so 7 drafts. One in work group last call just recently, LTA use cases. It would be great if people read it, made some comments, thought through it again. Origin validation clarify. The author came to say something as well about that.
Please read it in last call.
Who are you again, sir?
Randy IIJ.
Thank you.
It's a boring, stupid little document, but their vendors actually will. A couple of them have said they will implement it if we will just agree that this is what's needed.
Okay, wonderful. So the author would like us to read it and then hopefully push it through to work group last call in the next short while.
Kayur Patel, speaking as a working group member, I just wanted to let you know that the draft is in fairly stable state.
Okay, wonderful.
Relatively.
The route server RPKI Lite is perhaps ready for a working group last call. I think we haven't heard from the authors in a little bit, but we can ask on the list. SIDROPS RP is new as of a week or so ago. Tree validation is Tim. We just adopted that. Sorry, that was what it was. Sign tiles is new, or no? Sign tiles one we adopted. Go.
Yes, on tree validation, we asked for last call on that. Actually,
It's in last call now.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
Aha.
So-
Great. Sorry about that. My note taking on this is not so great. BGP Tech rollover is also in IESG status at this point. I have a quick thing about a CIDR draft to talk about. Pardon? Mike, it died off. How about this? No? Better? Broken?
His direction was at one if it's working. They lose reception.
Let's just do this. Hello? Yes? No? Nope.
Hello. Bugger. There we go.
It's working now. I'll go back to this one. Okay. So Sandy Murphy had some questions for the CIDR working group, which we can pretend like we're that group today for a moment. Oops, this one, sorry. She had some questions about router keying. These slides are updated on, they're published, so we can talk. You can read them later and talk about this amongst yourselves. But the point is, there's a set of questions and comments about the draft. Somebody else should read them, make sure that they're sane, and then the authors and Sandy and you can make some agreement about what to do from here. Again, I'm not going to read through all the slides. The biggest point is that there's a set of outstanding comments before it can move forward. So let's have a little bit of read and do that. We'll go back to the other slides. Okay, draft status. Okay, other presenters. That means the first person up is Erica. Oh, I should have also said, if you're presenting, you have to stay in the pink box so the people on the video can see you. Please talk into the mic, unlike me. If you feel like you want to take the mic out of the holder, feel free to do that. Just stick it back before you leave. And Erica, let me find your slides. Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Erika Vega from Renata, Colombia. I don't speak English very well, but I'll try to the best possible.
Pull the thing on the bottom.
Okay. This presentation is about origin validation in the infrastructure of Renata. And yes, thank you. I want to explain what Renata is. Renata is the network education or the national research of education in Colombia. Disconnect and articulate all the factors of the national systems of the science, technology, of innovation in Colombia through the connection with Clara networks. Clara is the network, an academic connects between the networks of the region and Latin America, and then between them and with the world through international links, GINT and Internet too. This is the infrastructure of Renata. Can you see the 22 nodes and the two nodes in the interconnection points. Next, please. And the two interconnection points with the links and the connections with Red Clara and connections with NAP Colombia and our service, internet service provider. Next. Okay. This project was carried out with resources received from FRIDA, Regional Fund for the Innovation in Latin America and the Caribbean. And this project additionally has the support of Cisco engineers, such as Álvaro Retana and engineers from LACNIC, Gerardo Rada. Next, please. Thanks. And these are the objectives of the project. This is the technological process, and which you know very well. Next. And these are the activities that we developed in the project. Next, please. And in the first activity, we obtained the following results: 328 professionals trained and virtual seminars, 69 professionals trained at seminars. And the most important results in this activity are Telefónica generate the signature for 1,109 resources from not found to valid. Next. Okay. Then we start on the trials, and these are the equipments that networks, and these are the system operative with the equipments. This is the topology of proof of trials. Next, please. And in this activity, were validated this number to prefixes, and these are the results to valid and invalid and not found for these prefixes. In the implementation in the environment productions, the following platforms were installed: RIP NCC RPKI Validator 2.23, Splunk Enterprise, PHP MyAdmin, and in the next slide, you can see the topology of the topology of the production. In this activity, we have that important issue because by internal policies in the configuration of BGP of the network, we don't have the routes in global mode. Instead, in global mode BGP, instead we have them into BRF. This because internal policies in Renata. And next, please. And in this slide are the two BRF, a 100,000 BRF, 100,000 2, and this is the number of the prefix in which. Next, please. The BRF in 100,000 contains the prefix directed to NAP Colombia and Internet. And meanwhile, BRF BRF 100,000 contains the prefix direct to NAP Colombia and Internet. Meanwhile, BRF 100,002 contains prefix for Red Clara. These are the results to the validate the 4 days. Because this, the origin validation was activated in 24 nodes, and it was necessary to generate and install patch over iOS in the equipments of the MPLS, since the information in the BGP route is not in the BGP global mode, but inside the BRF into the address family. So it was possible to activate the validation in the address family in order to validate the known routes contained in the BRF in the following form. Next, please. These are the configuration into the BRF with 100,000 and 100,002, the same configuration. These are the results on the fair validation. Next, please. And here you can see the prefixes, some prefixes valid into the BRF 100,000 BRF. The summary of results in this first phase is 100,000, 1,115 sign prefixes since the first training, 328 professionals trained, and the most important date is in this moment the patch was applied into equipments Nokia is in development, but the iOS TIMOS for the equipment 7715 Nokia. These are the report BRF 100,000 report, and you can see the not found, valid, and invalid prefixes in routes from the NAP Colombia and commercial internet. And this the report 100,002, the prefixes not found, valid, invalid. In these prefixes are Red Clara, and the number of the prefixes not found is very high. This project is the first in considering the implementation of origin validation in a national network. And the next steps we do activate the patch in the Nokia device was development, expand the idea in the academics networks from the collaborative work with Clara Network, and experiment with the SLORM and whitelist and other validator extensions. Thanks.
Randy Bush, IIJ. First of all, really nice work.
Please speak me slowly.
Me llamo Randy Bush, IIJ. Nice work.
Thanks.
Have you analyzed the invalids? In other words, that small percentage that's invalid, are they due to AS violations or to oops, sorry, boop, boop. Are they due to AS violations? Are they due to the classic aggregation, wrong prefix length? Do you know? Have you looked at them? And by the way, congratulations to America Latina to be in the lead on this period. I think it's really cool. But have you looked at the invalids to see why they're invalid?
I don't know
Okay.
if I stand the question, but
Que si viste, ¿por qué están inválidas las rutas?
okay. Yes. In the number, the invalid routes in Red Clara are invalid because not signed yet, but the invalid or not found routes in the NAP Colombia and in commercial internet, maybe some prefixes are not found or invalid because bad configurations in his network, and the prefixes of Red Clara not signatured yet.
Maybe LACNIC's research department could help.
Dima from ZDS. I would like to thank you for choosing Slurm in your testbed. So I'm one of the co-authors of this draft that describing the Slurm specification, and I'm looking forward more feedback from your work. Thank you.
The experiment with Slurm?
Some yes.
Now we worked with Alvaro and Amir with the new project for the proof Slurm in the network of Renata, and I don't know what steps are from the implementation of Slurm in these infrastructures, but hasta ahora vamos a empezar.
So, does this one? It doesn't work. Okay. Should I tap it? So, yes, All right. On the right entity RPKI validator that you're using in Slurm, it doesn't support the current Slurm document, but it has the same functionality in it in a different format. So, at least with regards to ROAS, which is what you're interested in. So you can do the same things as you can do with Slurm in that validator using a slightly different format. So for your experiment, I think it should not matter, in short.
Thanks.
Alvaro, so just to clarify, these are planned things, right? So there's no experimentation going on yet. But there's some interest because there's some of the private resources that Renata has that they need to advertise internally and to other people. So they want to experiment with that. I'm sure that they will be in touch with you guys on exactly how to get that done eventually. Yes.
On that subject, I don't want to steal too much mic time, but we're also working on a new version of the RPKI validator. So some point when that is ready for first use. I would be very interested to talk to you and anybody else who wants to try it out and give us feedback on how it's working and features, etc.
For your information, the SLUM is still a draft, So, and I guess it's going to be reviewed by the ISG. So I suggest you could put SLUM in your testbed when it's get published as IFC. Thank you.
Thanks. Finish.
Thank you very much.
Now he speak Spanish. No, he wants to speak Spanish in here.
Matthias?
So yeah. Oop. Hello.
Yeah, the clicky thing here works
No,
if you
that
want.
makes a mic. No, that's too fancy. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Matthias Welisch, and I talk about API deployments with IXPs. Actually, this was kicked off by Wendy. So just to make this clear, I'm not talking about any research. I'm more talking about stuff that I collected and which is publicly available anyway. So, so what is an IXP? Just to remind us, an IXP is a company, or in Europe, more an association where that interconnects people and autonomous systems. And there's also a difference between how an IXP is operated in the US compared to Europe. In Europe, they're mostly associations, and these IXPs do a lot of community building, organize technical meetings to provide their members with new updates. And our experience was actually that this helps also with deploying RPKI. We had several times the case that after meetings where we talked about RPKI, that the members started to create roles and actually also think about seriously to implement filtering on the routers. On the technical side, there's also this nice little thing at an IXP called route server that interconnects the autonomous systems. That acts as a proxy for peering to ease the peering configuration. Next slide, please. So what is in next? Okay, it's slow. What is this route server doing? I mean, the IXP members do not usually peer directly with each other, but peers with the route server. And the route server then distributes the BGP update messages to these members. Obviously, not all IXP members do this public peering with the route servers, but most of them. And yeah, and then you can also think about how to leverage this route server to improve security, which in this context means that the route server is doing the route origin validation instead of the peers itself. And some people argue that it's not a good idea to outsource security, but if you think about this more carefully, then you have two options. I mean, either you do not trust the route server, so then you have to deploy actually the route origin validation on your own routers, or you trust the route server, and then you can also benefit from this function, the route origin validation on the route server itself. Next slide. And yeah, now what are the options how an IXP gets involved into RPKI or not involved? I mean, they can do nothing. Okay, that's a boring thing. But there are also three other options. One is to just provide a RPKI cache server for their members to ease the start of the deployment. They can also do the route origin validation on the route server and then tag the BGP updates. I mean, in general, the route server should act transparently, but in this case, the route server would add a specific community that express the validation state of the route. There's also a draft on this topic in this working group. That's a route server RPKI Lite draft. And finally, the route server can also actively filter the updates based on the validation outcome. So these are the three major options that an IXP can do to get involved into RPKI. Now the question is, which IXP is doing what? Next slide, please. So one of the first IXPs that not only provided a cache server and validation and tagging, but also active filtering was the IXP in Lyon. They started this in 2013. It's a little bit unclear actually if this is an opt-in or opt-out service, but they do filtering. More interestingly, actually, is the Amsterdam Internet Exchange Point, one of the largest IXPs worldwide, whatever large mean, either measured in members or traffic, that's not the point here, but it's quite large. And they introduced a new route server in 2015, they called Falcon route server, and extended this route server with tagging of routes based on RPKI origin validation. Unfortunately, most of the members sticked with the old legacy route server, which did not have this functionality, but they did a little survey around among the members, and they got input actually that this RPKI functionality should be backported to the legacy route servers. And not only this, the members also voted for default filtering of invalid prefixes. So since October 2017, 20th October 2017, this legacy route server filters per default all invalid prefixes based on the RPKI. And only very few members actually opted out of this option. Yeah, there's also the FranceX that provides cache server validation and tagging since quite a while, and announced that they will introduce filtering per default until end of this year, which is also pretty cool, I would say. Next slide. There are a few other IXPs, in particular in the Latin American region, that provide validation and tagging. Next slide. And a few more IXPs in Bangkok, in South Africa, also Colombia, and Japan that provide public caches. And there are a few other IXPs, the Berlin Internet Exchange Point, the DKIX, and the London Internet Exchange Point, that at the moment do not provide actively infrastructure for RPKI, but do some testing and considering to deploy some kind of RPKI support, most likely tagging in the near future. So to conclude, yeah, thanks to those guys who kicked this off and answered my question. The current situation, I would say, for RPKI in the domain of Internet Exchange Point is quite good. I mean, quite diverse set of IXPs support RPKI, and one of the largest actually filters invalid prefixes based on RPKI by default. This is surprisingly, but quite cool for my, I mean, I was quite happy to see this. That's more or less it. Last slide. This is unrelated to the IXPs, but since beginning of this year, week, there's also an additional RPKI implementation available that supports prefix origin validation. On November 14, an extension was merged into the new free-range routing implementation, which is a fork of the Quagga BGP daemon. So this is also not too bad, I would say. That's it. So yeah, I mean, really cool from the IXP side, in particular the AMP6 community that filters invalids per default. Hopefully other will follow. Yes. Okay.
Randy Burshai, Jade, do you know if FRR does the stuff in origin validation clarifications draft?
Yes, we are aware of this draft, and we do not do any filtering per default. I mean, we follow the specs. Let's put it that way.
Well, also, do you handle injections from local and IBGP, et cetera, et cetera?
We have eBGP or IBGP? IBGP.
Part of the clarification is if I hear from an IBGP peer, and I should check that, validate that prefix. Even though I didn't hear it eBGP, I heard it IBGP. I should validate.
Yes, it's validated, but it does not drop the invalids per default or something like this. It's, yeah, so.
Doug Montgomery NIST.
It's very hard to hear.
I'm sneaking up on it. Do you know anything about the range of policies that are provided by these IXPs? Anything beyond ignore and valid?
Okay. I mean, as far as I know, nothing fancy. I mean, dropping invalids without depreference. I mean, dropping or not. That's it. No special policies. I mean, what you can, I mean, usually the IXP member, in particular with M6, has the option to say, okay, we do the route server should do the filtering or should not do the filtering, or just hacking. That's it.
I was talking with some folks at an Internet 2 meeting. They are trying to get a small RPKI pilot off the ground. And a few people voiced the comment that if one had a policy that said drop in valid, if covered by valid, they would be happy to turn it on.
Okay.
Sort of
I mean, it
cleans up stuff around the edge and ensures you don't black hole.
Yeah. Let's put it that way. I mean, sorry.
That is exactly what RPKI is meant to prevent.
Yes, and on the other hand, I mean, what you see with the M6 example, that obviously the members, I mean, they are fine that invalids are dropped, done, right? They explicitly voted for this option and nothing more. I mean, no special configuration or corner case configuration or something like this. They are completely fine, just drops invalids.
Rüdiger Volk, Deutsche Telekom. Matthias, are you aware whether any of these instances provides reporting back to the guys who are announcing invalids?
I don't think so, actually. I mean, with the M6, they announced this switch on 2 months before they started with this. And I'm not aware that they're actively approaching their members with invalids, such as Vibe is doing with their.
One has to guess that parties who are announcing invalids are not really aware of it, and it would be a helpful idea,
yes,
to provide that feedback. Actually, the current typical router implementations are not really helpful in many cases for producing such reports.
True. Yeah. I mean, I can double check with M6 guys, but yeah, I mean, it's I definitely agree. It's good to have monitoring and feedback to this to the invalid operators. On the other hand, just also as a side remark, I mean, there was not significant traffic loss because of filtering the invalids at the M6 at least. And those of you who are more interested in this, there was a lightning talk at the last Vibe meeting on this. If you Google for Vibe 75 and RPKI M6, you will find the slide deck. And also some statistics, how many prefixes are invalid, valid, not found, and how many members opt out of this option.
I just had a follow-up question to Rudiger's question, and actually in 2 parts. One was, I think you partially answered, but do we have any idea of how the landscape looks like? How many prefixes were valid, invalid? And then did anybody at IXP, particularly the client ISPs, came around and opt out?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I mean, the actual numbers on this slide deck, at least for the M6, there are roughly 10% of the prefixes are valid, and only very, very, very few are invalid. I mean, I think it was less than 1%, very, very few. But the actual numbers on the slide deck describe 75 for the M6, and yeah, so it's not as bad as people actually might think. And that's also probably due because, I mean, some years passed already, and a lot of the operators learned from this war misconfiguration, max length, and all of this stuff, and siblings and so on. So I would say, I mean, 2 years back, we would have a completely different view, but after all of this training by Raib, Lagnik, and so on, the overall landscape improved anyway, so already.
Thank you.
We have a replacement for Yufu, who is not feeling particularly great. I don't recall the person's name, however. I'm sorry. So, problem statement and considerations for ROAS. She had a colleague coming. This fellow, perhaps. Excellent. This clicker actually works, if you like.
Yeah.
And I don't have to be the clicker. Better for you.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jian Kang Yao from Cynic. Because my colleague Yu Fu got some ill, she cannot here to introduce her draft. So I help her to introduce. So next slide. Okay. Okay. So first is the background. The background is based on RFC 8482. So ROAs are digitally assigned objects that bind an address to an AS number and are assigned by the address holders. That means ROAs are related to the IP address prefix within the address block. So what's the problem? Currently, through our investigation, ROAs are issued with multiple IP address prefixes. So this is currently it is a common case that each ROA contain exactly one AS number, but many may contain multi-IP address prefix in the operational process of ROA issues. So according to our current status data, in the world, there are around total number of ROAs is around 7,000 ROAs, but the number of ROAs with a single prefix is around 3,000. The number of ROAs with multiple IP address prefix is around 4,000. So that means there are 4,000 ROA objects. There will have around 40,000 IP addresses prefixes. So normally there are ROAs with 2 to 10 prefix is around 3,000. But there are ROAs with more than 100 prefixes. There's around 40. So we also do some experiment to test it. So for example, if we add a new record, for example, 203.011.128/28. This is a new edit, but new edit record. But it's ISP may misconfigure or mistype to 204 to 203 to 204. So some by mistake or by mistype. So there will cause some problems. So our ROA object was revoked because of ISP's misconfiguration. So this obviously this will cause some problem. So the misconfiguration of ROAs contain multiple IP addresses or prefix may lead to much more serious than ROAs with few IP address prefix. So the update of the ROA contain multiple IP address prefix will lead to a redundant transformation between RP and BGP routes. So frequent updates of those ROAs will increase the convergence of time of BGP routers and reduce their performance obviously. So our suggestions and considerations. So the main idea is we we suggest the number of IOs contain multi-IP address should be limited to the some fixed number. So that's this draft the main idea. Comments are welcome. If you any questions, may better to send to the co-authors and or the mailing list. Because I'm not the co-author of this draft, I can collect comments or questions, but I cannot help answer. Thank you.
Randy Bush, IIJ. I think this draft has much improved. I have read the current status. Essentially says one prefix, one ROA is my reading, which agrees, I think, with what we said last time. I'd like to ask the CAs at the RIRs, George, Carlos, etc. Tim, are you issuing one for one?
So, yeah, we spoke about this in the past, and I agree that that should be the direction. In the past, the thought was let's limit the amount of ROA objects, which is why we went for fate sharing. And we have code in place that safeguards that whenever there's a change in resources, we reissue ROA. So I'm quite confident that we won't end up in a nasty situation. But that being said, it's easier to reason about these things when we separate them out. And I think the impact on the system as a whole in number of objects isn't that significant. But we haven't done the code change.
I'm a transit for rider. More ROAs, more ROAs.
Sorry, Tom from APNIC, we're in the same boat as Rock. So planned, just not done yet.
Rüdiger Volk, Deutsche Telekom. It might be a good idea to make more clear that this is essentially advice and considerations for CA implementers, because nobody is building the binary string of a certificate themselves. And some of the concerns for creating bad signed objects that break stuff quite certainly is also of concern for the CA implementation, and the CA implementation actually divides into the certificate and resource handling and the user interface. The usual user actually has not real influence on how things get packed.
Daniel Shaw, AFRINIC. Our current implementation does not limit this in any way. Does not. We allow multiple prefixes in a row. We don't have any specific active plans to change that, but we're open to making plans.
Okay, so thank you for your kind of comments. I will forward your message to the co-author. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Oliver.
Okay. So I'm talking today about RFC 8208, which basically is the RFC that assigns ID 1 to the ECDSA P256 algorithm. What I'm proposing was something very simple. It's to get a reserved space for documentation and experimental purpose only. And in this case, I'm talking as an implementer. I would like to create test scenarios, test vectors, and so let me go on further. where I can create use cases that do not conflict with future allocation of algorithms, so that I don't. What normally happens is that implementers might be a little lazy, and then they say, okay, I make my use cases. I use ID2, ID3, ID4, ID5, and then in 2 or 3 or 4 years, if you have another algorithm that has in the ID2, then I have to change my use cases or so forth. Or I want to write a best practice RFC or some documentation, and I make experiments in there where maybe I have a bad algorithm or something like this, and if I would now say the bad algorithm is ID2, and then ID2 gets assigned to another algorithm, I think that would not be such a great idea. So the idea what I have is to use the upper range of algorithms, IDs, like from 254, no, let me go one back, 251 to 254, and just reserve them to private use. What also has the nice thing that in case I have some experiments and it would leak out, what normally I can't see, but maybe it does, then these algorithm blocks could be ignored completely. So I have a little example what I want to show here. So for example, I have 4 routers, and they have, router A has algorithm ID 250, 251, router B 251, 252, router C 252, 253, and router D the same like router B. And the IDs down there are basically the IDs of algorithms, what they support. So if I now look into the RC 8205, we have the signature blocks. And in theory, I can have an infinite number of signature blocks in the code, but the RFC says I'm only allowed to have 2. So now, if I'm at router B, and router B definitely does not provide the signature block with the ID 250 from router A, then at router D, I do not want to see the signature block. So I can create tests where I can really test my implementation, see, does it perform the way the RFC expects it to perform or not? And so that allows me then to create test vectors that I can put on GitHub or something else, and other implementers can use the same things. So that's basically, let me see. Yeah. So the next step from here would be basically to request these 4 numbers. I was talking a little bit with KUR before and others. So there are basically multiple options what we can do. We can make an 82 or 8 bits, or we can create a new document that updates it or whatever. So I was wondering a little bit of input on how to proceed from here on, and maybe some questions or comments.
Randy Bushai, Jay, could you back up a few slides to the, no, back. One, no.
Yeah.
Yes, private use only, production systems. How do I know it's a production system? So yeah, things leak.
I know.
So I think with this, you need some way of, in fact, I'd reverse it rather than production systems must ignore that there's a flag that says I'm a test system and therefore these are allowed. Otherwise, by default, they're not. I mean, because otherwise it's going to leak.
I know where you want to go. So basically what I would say is that every system in normal operation mode should or must ignore that. Now I'm an implementer. I can go in the code and I can hard code, okay, now algorithm 1, I give you no ID this and I give you ID that. And it's more really for the implementer, for the vendor. It's not for the user of the router. So it's really something that allows me to create test vectors for implementers, and that we have a little wiggle room where we can play with IDs without really interfering in real world.
I understand your goal and I strongly support it. I just don't want it out on the internet. So I think it should include a mechanism for preventing that.
Yes.
That's all.
No, I totally get you. Okay, done.
Thank you very much. And Tim. Is that the right color, Tim? And also the
Is it
clicker works.
on? It's only one slide, so that's okay. Yeah, I just wanted to give a very short update on this, although if people want to have discussion, I'm open to that. So the Scientals document was adopted, uploaded yesterday. It currently covers a definition of an RPKI signed object that contains a tell that is then used as a mechanism to signal a change in where a trust anchor certificate may be retrieved. Or the other use case defined there is that it can be used to signal a change in key. With pre-staging, setting everything up, then signaling it, publishing an object so that it can be found by relying parties, and ultimately withdrawing the old key, leaving a pointer to the new location. But this document can use feedback. I don't think it's nearly finished, so I would really welcome feedback on it. Other things may also be discussed, like maybe we should actually look at pre-provisioning a new key in case the current key is lost. And if and when we do that, based on that outcome, we may want to apply a similar mechanism again to planned key roles. So without going into any of the gory details here, I just wanted to say it's there. Please read it, comment. If people want to have a bit more in-depth discussion now, I'm also open to that, but we can also do it offline and on the list. So that's all I had.
Okay. And I think somebody requested, no, you're fine.
Sorry?
Somebody requested BGP sec open mic. So Rudiger, I think it's all done for, unless you want to stay up there.
Well, okay, not BGP sec, but SIDROPS.
Sure, fine.
I would like to raise the question whether we are missing some relevant communication for people who are involved in operating RPKI in this group. The specific point where I did see very, very limited communication, and where I have, but that's a separate thing, where I have my problems with the actions actually taken and very little communicated, is the CAs moving forward to do the all resources trust anchors. What I did see was NRO sending a message to CIDR, not ops, and very, very sparse communication following up to it. I essentially remember a short exchange about amusements, which obviously did not attack the content. I did not note significant communication when the change was put into effect late at the end of the previous quarter. I think that's stuff where we really should have more reporting and likely more discussion in the SIDROPS, since this is stuff I'm pretty sure that is relevant for people operating in the area or considering and evaluating the value of moving into operating RPKI stuff. And I would be slightly surprised if no one is in the room who does not share some of these concerns.
Randy Bush, IIJ. I share the concern, Rudiger. I share zero optimism that any technical or social mechanisms will change the sociopathology of the RIRs.
Sorry. So just so I can clarify a little bit, maybe. The RIRs didn't have a 0/0 trust anchor to fall back on, so they published one. I'm not, by the way, impugning anybody's purposes here. I'm just trying to state a fact. Is that this is, first off, correct?
You're correct. The RIRs didn't have it because they prevented the IANA from doing it where it should be.
Okay, I don't.
You want to drill down on this one? We can drill down on this one.
I don't want to drill down to that. I understand there are some politics. That's not super critical to me right now. So this has happened. Now the RIRs publish a 0/0 for purposes of transfer, let's say, of resources between regions or between RIRs. So now we're in a situation where my resources could be signed in more than one RIR. And from the other side of the world, it may be unclear whether I'm transferring or somebody made a mistake, number one. And number two, from my side of the world, I may have not started a transfer. So I may want to know that somebody has published by mistake my resources. So that's next is correct or wrong? That's...
You may want to know, but you can't. During transfer, you don't know whether it's intent or it's an accidental dual publish.
Sorry.
Pardon me, Randy Bush, IJ. So
I know, sorry, apologies. I know that I started a transfer or not.
Right, but
you
I,
don't.
observing as a relying party, don't know.
Okay, so what I said was true. Okay, so maybe Rudiger, what you're asking here is if we can't roll back the clock on this, that we have some form of monitoring infrastructure either available or currently running.
No, well, I'll
Like,
let
what do we do
Rudiger
about it?
speak for himself, but my interpretation or the part of the concern I have is the lack of discussion, not the particular result. The lack of discussion and the lack of a forum and the lack of acting as a community with a common interest.
Doug Montgomery, NIST again. Oh, not close enough. Well, so I like to at least report that in talking to some other large organizations, they're concerned that this is a robustness issue, not unlike unscoped CAs, and at least asked me the question, which I couldn't provide an answer. If this doesn't create a broader risk scenario, to explain why, and I couldn't explain why.
Could I ask you to maybe use a few more words about why you think this is or why you think they think this is a robustness issue?
It could be black helicopters. It could be local law enforcement in countries around the world. If I'm, let's say, a government agency and somewhere around the world, someone could exert pressure to allow a different RIR to sign a ROA for a longer prefix for my routes, I would be concerned.
Thank you.
Again, reinforcing Randy, first step I'm asking about, well, okay, are we actually getting sufficient communication and information? Without With more and better information, we might actually find ways to find things agreeable that are not that clear at the moment. For institutions thinking about, well, okay, how much can we trust all of this? One even might go to the legalistic view of looking at the CP of the whole system and at the CPS of some of the CAs, and question whether the text that's there is actually subverted by what is happening. The technical evaluation may be different, but what can be perceived from the outside can be really awful.
Randy Bush, IJ, again, drilling down on this is probably, I'm not sure where I want to go, but Doug, do you see the exposure of subversion with the RIRs each doing 0-0 as greater than the RIRs each having 4 fake subsidiary Charlie Foxtrots? In other words, did this really make it worse? And I suspect not.
Let me just say that this put a lot of fuel into the black helicopters for some people.
Yeah, Tim Reisers, RIPE MCC. I cannot speak for anybody else. So yes, unfortunately, there are politics here and constraints. I can't solve them. I doubt that anybody in this room can solve them. But on the communication front, we did not send the update that we did to SIDROPS. I can make sure that that happens. We did send it out on other channels. We do explain how a structure works. In effect, we had a 0-0 at the root that is offline. Then we have an online component beyond that that we can operate in production. From that, we got a third level certificate that also reflects the resources that we publish in other sources, such as in our stats. And from that, we issue to members. So even though we overclaim at the top, you can verify that it's consistent with what we say in other places. We also publish transfers that are complete. So that's another source of data you can look at.
Rob Ostine. Sorry. So yes, Tim is correct that the RIRs did tell CIDR what they were doing. The difficulty is they didn't actually ask whether it was a good idea or what anybody thought of it. They just said, this is bloody well what we're doing, deal. I don't want to get into the politics because that's kind of futile. The thing is, there have been cases in the past where some large monopoly that had a control point has done something that was technically stupid. And some portion of the IETF has called them on it. And sometimes they back down. You may recall a thing called Site Finder. Okay, maybe it would work if we actually wrote up all the things that are horribly wrong with this. Maybe it wouldn't, but it might be worth a try if people feel strongly enough about this. I suspect that's more likely to get results than sitting here worrying about the politics, because RIR politics have been broken forever and we can't fix that here.
So Chris Morrow, Google. So Rob, that's sort of where I was trying to get to. Is we might need some monitoring and management stuff, but we maybe also should write something down about, is this a good idea or not? Oh, sorry, I'm not eating the mic enough, says Randy. Again, we may need some monitoring and management work done for operating the network stuff that we have, but maybe we should also take the time, as Rob said, to write down what this is good or bad for. Is there somebody who would like to take a start at that, Rudiger, since you stood up?
I'm known for avoiding doing slideware and text. And I doubt I'll change until they force me to retire. One point on Chris, on your discussion of what technical problems are under the hood of the all resources anchor. The question for telling about how resources and details in CA operation actually are done for the interesting things have been raised for quite a number of years and have not really been answered. And kind of with that memory, what we have seen recently kind of fits into a pattern that does not look very nice. But yes, we need documentation, and referring to Tim's comments. Yes, Tim did show me a web page that explains the hierarchy that the RIPE NCC is using. I didn't see something like that from the NRO. And sorry, I'm too lazy to go out and investigate every other root CA, whether they actually published something like that. Is the structure that Tim was talking about common across all the root CAs? Probably not.
Randy Bush, IJ. The point I think I would amplify, Rudiger, is that that document should have been published as a proposal before this was done. Not whether it's bad or good. It should have been discussed. I mean, even ICANN does better than this. And that is a curse.
Okay, but aside from shouting into the wind, what do we do? Shout into the wind, I suppose.
You could take my initial question as a question to the RIRs, whether they consider to do more open detail communication. I'm not going to change my customs about not writing and start to write for the RIRs what they are doing. I don't know.
Chris, if you want, Randy Bush IJ, if you want a measurement structure to look at it, then please write the draft describing what you want, instead of trying to beat it out of people who are trying to discuss a different problem.
No, I'm sorry. I was not asking for the measurement. I was saying if what Rob says is appropriate, if somebody's can put together a document that says this thing happened, it wasn't so cool, we think, can we get the IAB to make some statement based on that?
I was going to say that usually it's the IAB who does that kind of thing.
Okay.
Are there any exalted IAB members in the audience? Yeah, so much for that.
Okay. So that means we're kind of back to shouting into the wind and writing something perhaps brief to send to the IAB and say, hey, this thing happened. Maybe we should think about the impact of that. That seems fine. The other thing is perhaps, I don't know, and I'm not going to try and get into I'll try to avoid the politics here. I don't know that the RERs have a responsibility to the IETF proper. They have a responsibility to the internet and to their particular community. So did they message this to their communities in a way that was useful there? Or should the message be, hey, by the way, before you do something like this again, please make sure your community agrees to this message. And if you need help formulating technical data, there's people that will help you do that.
Well, for the first question, I can tell you that within my regional circumstance, I did not see sufficient timely information. Not sure how it looks in Asia Pac or in Africa or somewhere else. Damned, I lost the second thing.
Carlos Lagnick. Going to your point, Chris, yes, indeed, the RIRs feel that they have a responsibility towards their communities. I'm not exactly sure what they feel about the responsibility towards the IETF. I'm not saying there is none, but it's probably not as strong as the responsibility they feel towards their communities. There was communication going on to our community, and there was an open call for comments on the movement to 0/0, and we got exactly 0 comments. Rudiger, I know you were aware of the public consultation. Did you submit something?
Are you talking about the thing that was expired a year before you did the announcement?
No. I'm talking about something that went out this year, perhaps 2 or 3 months ago, requesting comments from the community.
No, I'm not aware of anything. And anyway, the NRO statement by John went out something like a week before the Prague IETF. And unfortunately, I was in personal circumstance that disabled me, and I should not have gone to Prague for that. And I probably would have made noise in Prague if I was not somewhat handicapped. Yeah, but anyway, one comment on the responsibility. With the global distribution of the unique numbers, the RIRs actually, I think, have a responsibility to the global internet as a whole. The internet, the number distribution is for running the internet, and it does not work if any of the regions works on some localized special interest. That would, if the RIRs decided to go that way, I think they should grab, APNIC should grab 20 elsewhere used Class A's and distribute them to China and India.
Actually, they're about to distribute them to China and Japan.
Danny McPherson. I just wanted to observe that the IB did comment on this in 2010, and I don't think they said anything else, so someone may want to ask them to clarify their comments. It was specifically on this issue, if I recall correctly, and it hasn't changed, and it's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people have some concerns with RPKI, and I think if I had an issue with what recently occurred, then if I cared, I would probably use my RIR membership. I'm not sure that this is the right place, but I think that anybody that's watched could probably suspect that the RIRs, where they said this is an artifact of the architecture and the implications on RIRs, not just about the RIRs wanting to do things to protect themselves. So
Randy Bush,
doesn't surprise me.
Randy Bush, IJ, the 2010 thing was the single root, not the process of how CA structures changes being discussed with the community before being executed. Rudiger, Doug, do we want to work on a skeleton of a document to carry to the IAB to say there's concern about this? we can bitch forever. It's nice to have a change from bitching about ICANN, but you know.
Thank you for the direction. Anything else for open mic? And I think we're done a little early. Thank you very much. See you next time.
reserve some space. I think